Hey guys, I'm super stoked. We've got an all-star that's been referred to me to come on to the podcast. Tarquino is with us today. He's with Carbutti and Company, right? Carbutti Realtors. Got it right. I should know that. We've been working with them for a long time. And Nick is an all-star and a rock star, and he's on the rise in the industry. So that's why his broker Jonathan said, "Hey, you know what? We should maybe have Nick on the program." So Nick, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So, before we jump in and start talking strategy and everything, let's back it up a step and let's talk about you getting into the real estate business and kind of how that happened. What was your modus there? What was your thought process?
It's funny because I think real estate found me, and a lot of people talk about not knowing what they want to do until they find it or it finds them. So I was in college for secondary education. I finished my junior year. I kind of discovered it wasn't what I wanted to do. Never went back for my senior year.
Mm.
Uh, I returned back to my pre-college job, which was teaching at a kickboxing gym. So I was in great shape, but I was making $15 an hour at the time. So now
Right?
that's minimum wage. But at the time, I was like, well, whatever, it's all right. Then COVID happened and the gym
Mm.
shut down. So I lost my job.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting at home and I'm like, I can't let this time pass me.
Hmm.
What am I going to do?
Yeah.
And one of my friends was like, oh, well, try real estate, go to school. It's only like $300. And I was like, what do I have to lose? And then I met with Jonathan afterwards, and it's funny because his vice president at the time had said to me, I was like, I just want to get into it. I just want to know what to do. And he was like, just focus on the test. And for me, looking back now, that test was so hard to overcome that if
Yeah.
I did not focus on just that test, I would have never passed it. And I still didn't pass the state portion, but at least I got through the general book for the
You know what's
first
really
time.
interesting about that is that I didn't pass the first time either. And
Yeah.
so when somebody comes to me and they say they got a 100% score on the test, I'm always like, I don't know. I don't know about you.
But
You're
how
not doing
many
very
times?
well. I don't know. You're a good test taker. It doesn't necessarily translate into being a great regent. Anyway, I
Yeah.
just it's funny.
I still don't need to know how many square feet are in a mile, but needless to say, I
Right.
can look back up if I need to.
Right. So you got your license, and then you started with Jonathan's term, and off to the races. What happened for you in the beginning stages?
So I was lucky. I came into the process with a buyer.
Mm.
I think just having one client, just one, it really helped me. It
Hmm.
gave me something to go out there and do. Even if
Yeah.
we only looked at one or two houses, it was something. Um, I think what's difficult in the beginning is just sitting in the office and making calls and doing a lot of that outbound prospecting. But if you're not physically out there feeling a little bit of the result, it can be discouraging,
Right.
right? So that's why I really appreciated that. And I tried to feed off of that energy of, I want to get out here and show more people houses
Right.
because it's fun at the same time, right?
Yeah.
We enjoy going around looking at it. I found how to get my new towel rack in my bathroom from a listing. So, you know, um, but it's tough, you know. I
With
forgot what.
the Yeah, when you're coming into the business, it can be tough because there's so much to learn and it's such a steep learning curve. And it does make it a little bit challenging for people because they're like, man, there's so much to take in and what should I focus on? How did you overcome or what did you do to start like lead generating to start getting some more leads? You came in with the one buyer. What did
Mhm.
you start picking up some more? Did you do open houses? How'd you jump in?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple different things I did to start. Open houses were a big thing.
Yeah.
Circle prospecting,
Mm.
open houses ahead of time, which kind of gave me the practice of getting on the phone and talking to people
Yeah.
instead of having to be like, "Hey, Mr. Seller, do you maybe want to meet with me?" It was, "Hey, I have a open house down the street at 123 Main Street. I just wanted to invite you down, come check it out, see what we're about." Or be nosy and look at your neighbor's house. It was something silly you could joke about.
Yeah.
And it got me comfortable on the phone with others, and it got you used to the people that hung up on you. Don't bother me. Don't call me. It takes 100 no's to get that one yes, right?
100%. Yeah.
But man, what a beating it takes on the ego getting those 100 no's, right? They don't talk about that. So, they tell you it takes the 100 no's to get the one yes, but I think the majority of us fall out after maybe 30 no's.
Oh, easy. Yeah.
That's hard to even say after 50 no's. It's like, I'd be surprised if, another 10% continued after 35 no's.
Yeah.
It is extremely difficult. And it's so easy to say, oh, that doesn't work, I'm not going to do it.
Right.
Same thing with an open house. You do an open house 1 or 2 times and you're like, you know what, it doesn't work. But then you start realizing strategies that do work.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, listen, I'm not going to push myself at them. I'm going to leave my cards out, but instead I'm going to be talking about time to own. I'm going to talk about FHA, 203K, different down payment programs and ways to qualify and things like that. Building and closing cost credits, things like that to show the value.
Yeah.
I feel that trust is earned, it's not given.
100%.
Right?
Yes.
It's kind of like, it brings me back to the days in high school where your teachers, you kind of walked in the classroom and they demanded the respect immediately.
Right.
So I try to put myself in the other shoes of the buyers. How are they going to feel? You don't want that used salesman breath coming down at them,
No. Commission breath.
Yeah, commission breath. There we go. So between open houses, the circle prospecting, and then eventually when you put that effort in and the company sees it, you start to get the company lead generation.
Right.
And whether that's going on lead rotation, whether that's co-listing with another agent because you showed enough
Effort.
Sometimes it's difficult. You got to go run around and do showings for other agents.
Yeah.
And run here and run there. But in showing that effort, it's like, wow, this guy's a hustler or this girl's a hustler. They really want this. I can bring them in on my next listing when I go away on vacation and know that they're going to be on top of it.
I think that's a really rare quality too, because I see so many agents get in the business and they don't have that grit to go out there and do the hard work. And you remind me of a guy that I worked with for years, Alex. Same thing. He would take anybody out and show them property in any distance, 100 miles away, because he just wanted to earn the business and respect of the other people in the office. And then it starts coming back to you. They start referring you some of their overflow buyers and things that they just can't handle. And that's a great place to start when you're a new agent.
It is. And I did it to someone just last year.
Yeah.
It was the middle of my busy season, and it was a client that I knew I couldn't deliver to time-wise.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? Let me hand this off to someone. If they're just getting started, it's going to mean a lot to them. And I know they have the time to devote.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it feels good too. It's kind of like, wow, that's what so-and-so must have felt like when they helped me.
Yeah. You're paying it forward.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we're in an interesting time of the year. We've come out of the fourth quarter, which was, a little bit rough. Let's be honest. The market wasn't what we've had in the last few years. Now we're coming into the new quarter. We're deep into the new quarter and getting ready for spring and summer. What takeaways do you have? What recommendations do you have for people? Because you're a top agent. What's your thought processes of moving from one quarter to the next, and what's your approach to that?
Yeah, so I was taught to always be 2 months ahead, right?
Yeah.
Real estate's a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Never ride that roller coaster.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that always worked for me to work 2 months ahead.
Yeah.
And I learned my very first year, you have to work through the holidays. You have to hustle through the holidays to feed myself, pay the bills, keep the lights on in January and the beginning of February.
Yeah.
Because with the snow on the ground, I mean, do you and I want to go out? Do you want to go out on date night? You want to stay home.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't want to go out, so you can't blame them for not wanting to, but it's important for us to plan for things like that. So I always, this past year, I worked really hard through December. I had a great January. I had a great February. But my last closing was Valentine's Day, actually. and I haven't had another closing scheduled.
Yeah.
So the fear and the panic started to really rise within me.
Hmm.
Then, the negative self-talk begins,
Yeah.
and I start criticizing the little things. Oh, I should have been doing this. Why haven't I been making calls on Tuesday night like I used to? Why
Yep.
haven't I been doing this? Why haven't I been doing that? I could have followed up with this person. I have some tasks to do in my database. And then I thought back to when I mess up on my diet. I say to myself, it's a new day.
Yep.
you know, I don't know if I can swear, but quit your bitching.
Yeah. No,
And
you can swear. Yep.
um, I wish you can beat my daddy swears so bad. If everyone met my dad, they'd understand why I swear. But for me, it's a new day. But why don't I carry that belief into my work aspect in my work?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so funny how the ego can come in and tear us down. We're our own worst enemies sometimes.
100%.
So I think I finally just came to the realization, maybe honestly, Jim, within the last week. And I
Hmm.
think that's what really made me dial in and realize what I wanted to talk about in today's episode is, just go back to the basics.
Yeah.
Go to what you know, go to what works,
Yep.
what has not failed you.
Run the plays at work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I've studied real estate since the beginning of time. I haven't been here since the beginning of time, but it always gradually goes up. Even
Absolutely.
if it comes down, it's always going to come back up.
Yeah.
One of my office managers, he tells us in 2008, they still sold 4 point something million homes in Connecticut.
Right.
In one of the lowest markets, we still sold.
Yeah. There's always
So
buyers and sellers.
there's always going to be. So I think, you know, it's not just the law of attraction, but like negativity attracts negativity.
Hmm.
So I've been reading up a lot on this, and it's if you think constantly about negative thoughts, you're only going to see the negative thoughts. Your friend gets a white Honda Pilot, and you start seeing white Honda Pilots everywhere, and you're like, oh my God, I'm seeing them everywhere now because you got it. Everyone wants it. No,
Yeah.
it's because your brain now recognized it and you're looking for it everywhere.
But you get more of what you focus on, right? Yeah.
So it's just about taking those small life practices into the workspace
Hmm.
and not beating yourself up. you know it's funny, I started writing myself like a how to unfunk yourself.
Hmm.
And I said, I want to write some notes to myself for me next December,
Hmm.
next January, because late January, early February is where I really get into that rut and I start to say, oh my God, I haven't gotten anything under contract. How am I paying my bills in April? How am I going to pay my bills in May?
Yeah.
When, you know, I just got a deal accepted last night and we're closing the first week of April.
Right.
Or actually, we're closing in 21 days, the end of March. So you can make things happen, right? So I was telling myself, oh, it's just, it's the supply and demand, or, my buyers, they keep getting beat out or they don't have the right buying power. That's not it.
Right.
When there's a will, there's a way. And I always found it. So it's bringing that positive mindset back to it and saying, I'm going to find you guys a house. I'm going to fight for you.
Yeah, I think I had this one agent that would come to me every about the same time every year, February, March, and be like, I'm almost out of business. I'm out of I'm out of escrows, I'm out of listings." This is a top, 10, $15 million a year agent. And I'd say,
Yep.
okay, don't panic. Don't panic. Now let's go back to your busiest time. When's been your busiest time? We do the exercise every year. She says, well, what was that one? And I said, okay, your busiest time, what exactly were you doing? She'd say, okay, I was doing this and this and this. You just got to go back to the basics, back to the fundamentals. Let's get back on the horse. Let's go back and do the things that we were doing before. And inevitably, within 30 days, she'd be right back on the horse,
Yeah.
crushing it as always. But it's interesting that we all tend to fade off of what works. We all do what works and we get some success, and then we fade off of it. But we just got to be reminded.
it gets easy, and it's, you don't want to come across as like ungrateful or whatever it may be, but you start getting the company generated leads, or family and friends just keep calling you,
Yeah.
and that residual business just keeps coming, and then when it pauses, it's shame on you,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Just because business is good does not mean your prospecting should end. And
No.
I say this because it's important for me to hear myself say those own words so I can hold myself accountable.
100%. Yeah.
Um, and it's tough. Right now I'm creating a prospecting space.
Hmm.
Some people are really good with a set schedule and prospecting every day during that schedule. It doesn't work for me. I
Hmm.
can't be that disciplined. I tend to rebel,
Hmm.
and then I tend to, get the fuckets and not do it at all and say, oh, I'm fine. I haven't done it. I'll survive. And
Yeah.
that, I don't like that, because then the ego overtakes you. So it's so important to me to stay humble and constantly remind myself I'm easily replaceable. I
Yeah.
learned that at the kickboxing gym.
Hmm.
They taught us that. They sat us down. They said, you are all replaceable, even ourselves, the owners. So never think, that, you are too good for the next person.
Right.
And it's, we're never going to be finished with learning and growing.
Yeah, I think for one thing that's I've been coached on it over the years is having a lane of performance. And lane of performance is you're rewarding what you should be doing. Like when you prospect, you give yourself a reward, right? You do the job. But and most people are pretty good about that, but some people are motivated more by pain than pleasure, right? And so the pain is like, okay, what's the pain point if you don't do it? So are you
Yeah.
gonna have to donate to a charity $50 today if you didn't do your hour prospecting, you know? So having what they call the carrot and the stick, and you're operating within the lane, I think some can be sometimes motivating for people. But I want to go back to the self-talk for a second. I
Yeah.
think self-talk is so powerful, positively or negatively. So when you start talking to yourself negatively, some people have told me that's like almost like a prayer to yourself, and you're encouraging those more negativity to fall on you. And we know people like that in life. Like it's just like a black cloud follows them, and
Yeah.
you wonder why. It's because they're kind of praying negatively all the time. It's kind of crazy, and kind of breaking out of that habit is really important. How do you break that negative self-talk when you're in that space, that mind space?
When you catch that glimpse of clarity, you have to jump on it,
Mm,
because it doesn't last for long,
yeah, I like that.
and you don't know when the next one is going to come,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So that is your inner compass telling you, I'm fighting for you, I'm rooting for you. Let's just keep pushing.
hmm,
So for me, I took that and I sought help.
yeah,
Um, I got a nutritionist coach.
hmm.
Paid more money than I've ever paid anyone in my life. Not only did he get me in great physical shape,
Hmm.
he got my mental health back to where it was.
Yeah,
And I've got this mind body connection again,
hmm,
right? From there, I learned from him. I kept saying to him, I look up to you so much. Like, how do you do this? How do you stay positive every day? Like, how do you wake up and show up for everyone?
hmm,
And it was so eye-opening for me to just kind of hear him say, listen, I hired people that I looked up to, that I
hmm.
admired,
Yeah,
and you have to always continue seeking that growth.
yeah,
So and this is real, and this is why I'm happy you asked. I sought out kind of like a life coach,
hmm,
and unfortunately it was too expensive and I couldn't swing it.
hmm.
Jonathan always tells us we're only allowed a 5-minute pity party. 5 minutes, then it's over, get back to work.
I like that.
I love that, because I try to hold on to that.
Yeah,
So I had my 5-minute pity party, and I'm like, okay, what can I do in place of it? And I said, why don't I ask my broker, the owner of the company who I look up to so much? Why don't I ask him to meet with?
Yeah, that's great.
And it was so interesting because the first time we sat down, he kind of, began the conversation talking about mindset and headspace. And I said, I'm so happy you started with that because, John, I don't want to talk to you about how many phone calls I'm making or this and that. I can do that with anyone. And honestly, I know what I need to do. If I need to come to you for that kind of accountability, shame on me.
Yeah.
At this point in time.
Sure.
But I said that the headspace is where I really I need help because it's difficult sometimes to talk about our business with our partners or our family or our friends, right? Because they might say, oh, you're being inconsiderate, or, oh, you don't understand, or, oh, you should hear the kind of day I had. You didn't even have to go to the office today. So it's so important to have someone who knows the business to be able to talk to. And, that's helped me grow, right? Because he's kind of told me how, he's been coaching with you and, how he gets challenged by other people.
Yeah.
And that really opens my eyes. And, sometimes I say to him, I say, what do you do when you're stressed out? How do you keep going? Other than it's tough because we always get to look up and ask someone else. There's an attorney to go to, a mortgage lender, your broker.
Yeah.
I love not being the end of the tunnel, right? I don't want to open my own brokerage. I like coming in and clocking in and out. But it's that kind of energy I admire because that is true strength and wisdom of knowing, this too shall pass.
Yeah.
This sucks right now, but it sucked before, and it's really low lows and really high highs. Very seldom are we in between.
No, it's an emotional roller coaster being in real estate, definitely. But there's several things I like to point out what you said there, which is really important. And that is having a coach is important. And you can get coached at every level. Like you're saying, you got to your broker and Jonathan, you're part of that partnership. So he's happy to coach you. So you look for the mentors. And I think what's another great strategy that I've seen a lot of agents, especially younger agents do, is go to the top agents in your market, even if you don't work with them in the same office, and just say, I want to buy you lunch. You want to talk about the cheapest coaching session you'll have, and you'll get $1 million nuggets out of that lunch. And people are often thinking, oh, they're not going to share anything with me, but they're happy to share with you. Most of them are open books. There's no secrets in real estate, really. And I think that's really important. And the other thing you were talking about with mindset, I think is really, really critical. And I think one thing that goes along with that mindset issue is rituals and having success rituals where you can say, hey, this is the things that I do to reset if I need to. And having a reset ritual, like a lot of athletes have reset rituals, which I think is really, really smart to kind of break yourself out of a negative headspace.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
and podcasts.
what's that?
And podcasts, just
And
listening to
podcasts.
a lot of other like-minded individuals like yourself
Yeah.
to get that positive talk in your life. Even if I can't talk back with you, I can have conversations with myself based on what I'm listening to.
Yeah. Yeah. The interesting thing about when you're talking about when you got your health right, then you felt like you were operating at a higher level professionally. And I'm a big believer that there's a big connection between to be at a high performance state, whether you're an athlete or a corporate athlete, you have to be at a high performance state physically. I really believe that. And I think that there's a big disconnect with a lot of realtors out there that kind of treat their bodies like garbage cans and then expect themselves to be able to perform at a high level. Perform with intensity because this is an intense business. It's emotionally intense, but also physically, it's intense on your body because of the highs and lows, the adrenaline rushes, and everything else. You found that to be a big change for you?
I have, especially that adrenaline rush, like you said. I think it can be addictive
Yeah.
for me. So, when my phone rings, I'm like, is that going to be another sale? It's exciting.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that we didn't talk about, like as a stress factor, is, how that can also affect your personal life.
Absolutely.
It can be a very physical strain, yeah, because we're constantly running, you're sitting in the car driving a lot of the time. But, I've had to cancel lunches and dinners with my mom.
Mm,
My $750,000 buyer wants to go see a property, and we know the market, the way the bidding wars are. I don't have time to say, hey, can we go tomorrow? I'm going to dinner with my mom.
yeah.
But I think the benefit is we do know when we can push it,
Yeah.
right? But not to take advantage of that. Um,
100%. And I think I used to coach agents because I think realtors probably have one of the highest divorce rates in the world if you really studied it. This is coming from a guy that has been married 3 times, so I can totally speak into this whole thing. Because there's a natural, just work, not a workaholicness that comes with it, real estate, but there's a lot of hours that we spend a lot of times. But I always liken it back to what I've learned through my process is that we have to make emotional deposits because we're a lot of times we're making emotional withdrawals. And just like you said, that emotional withdrawal could be, I got to cancel dinner. We can't spend the weekend together. But you got to balance that out at some point with an emotional deposit. Otherwise, your relationships go bankrupt. And they go bankrupt with your spouse, but also they go bankrupt with your kids, your friends, and everybody else that's around you too. So you got to really be able to manage that and really be conscious of it, I guess. I think a lot of people aren't conscious of it, but it's really important you brought that up.
yeah, I wanted to ask you, as a coach,
Yeah.
what principles do you emphasize on to sustain success?
I think to sustain success runs in cycles. Like we have high points and low points, right? But the key is to understand where you're at in your own cycle and say, at this point, am I in an upward cycle or a downward cycle, right? And we can recognize them. So I would call it the downward spiral. The downward spiral is where we start thinking we kind of know it all. We've been there, we've done that. And then we think, I don't need any more education. I don't need to listen to any more podcasts or books. I don't need to prospect as much, and which leads to less listings, less escrows, less closings, which leads to some depression. And then you say, okay, what's if I reckon and every single agent in America listening to this is going to go through that downward spiral, right? Everybody does. I did it, you did it, everybody's going to do it. And you can work, and here's what's interesting, you're going to do it again. It's this is like catching a cold. It's like a virus that we're going to catch over and over. So, but the key thing is you got to be able to recognize it and say, uh-oh, I'm in a downward spiral. I got low listing count. Why do I have a low listing count? I stopped prospecting. Why did I stop prospecting? Because I thought I knew it all and I didn't get educated and I didn't adapt, right? So it all leads back. And then you can say, okay, what can I do to prevent this or break out of this? You got to do the exact reverse. I got to get educated, get inspired, get motivated, get a coach. I got to start lead generating, and that will lead to all the other results. And I think that's just got to recognize where you're at, and it's okay to go through the cycles, but understand what cycle you're in.
What advice would you have for someone that might not be able to recognize? And I'm talking for other people that might be listening right now.
Yeah.
What if they're still stuck in that downward spiral and they don't realize?
That's where you need to go someone else outside of you. And the first step is to try to go to the balcony. That's where you analyze yourself. If you have that power and you go to
Yep.
the balcony, you step outside yourself and you say, if I was directing myself, what am I doing wrong right now? And see if you can kind of remove yourself from yourself and give yourself some rec coach yourself. But if you can't do that or you're incapable, try to go to somebody else, even if it's a colleague or your broker, and say, I need a meeting where you tell me what I'm doing wrong. You don't need to protect my ego. I don't need you to couch it. I don't need you to tell me what I need to hear. You tell me what I'm doing wrong. I'm going to tell you everything I'm doing. You tell me what I'm doing wrong. And then
Yep.
you just tell me bluntly. I call it brutal honesty. I need brutal honesty right now. And when you look at organizations that are at the highest level, so if anybody's listening that's a team owner or brokerage owner, having super transparency where you tell other people that sucked. That flyer you created sucked. That doesn't match our organizationals, or hey, you know what? You didn't do a good job. And the other person on their side taking that and not having the ego and being like defensive about it and letting their ego down and saying, you know what? I did suck. That is not in our standard. Let's get better. That's where organizations really take off. It's where you have a bunch of ego-driven people that can't lose face is where you have a problem. That's the first, and what kind of gets back to answer your question is, I think ego is the big problem for a lot of agents. We have such high egos that we can't let our defensive.
Yeah.
Right.
It's very easy. And you know, one thing I wanted to touch on is, you know, you said it's important to recognize it. And I think what I've learned from catching this common cold is I'm recognizing it earlier and earlier each time.
Yes. Yeah.
So I can get on antibiotics sooner, right?
Right.
You can see
Right.
that help. And I think, you know, that's again where it's like, screw my ego. I'm going to go to my broker and tell him I'm struggling right now.
Yeah.
Right. And that might be, you know, hey, listen, like, you know, my last two listings, they decided to list with their best friend, you know, and it's having to remind yourself, you know, I've won listings because they listed with me because I was their best friend. It's
Right.
you have to remember you beat other people once before too. You're not going to win everything.
Right.
But I had a great December,
Hmm.
right? And I think that led to me having a depressing January because I got 5 deals together in the span of 10 days in December. That's
Hmm.
unheard of,
Right.
you know. So when January came around, I'm like, you know, thinking my shit doesn't stink, like, all right, let's keep going. And I wasn't, but it was because my buyer pool died out,
Right.
right? Everyone got under contract, but I didn't have anyone else. And I tried saying, oh, there's nothing out there, blah, blah, blah. But I had to just very quickly fall on my sword and say, you know what, Nick? What if you called some people in your database?
Right. Yeah.
What if you followed up with some of those watches that you have?
Hmm.
Here. Um, and that's when you start to see the results come,
Yeah.
right? That or
Yeah, I think that people, it's very easy to start justifying your own failures and say, well, the reason I'm not successful is because of this or that or the other, instead of taking personal responsibility and saying, no, it's actually me. I'm the problem here. And so what am I going to do to fix my problem? I got to take control. I love what Mel Robbins says. She says, no one's coming to rescue you. So you better figure it out.
dude, so I went through that thing that you talked about. I listened to Mel Robbins and I kind of fell off from her, kind of like, oh, you know, I have nothing more to learn. And so you fall off from it.
Yeah.
And that's when I started getting in my funk. I didn't listen to as many podcasts and I came back to her. And I just listened the other day and she just popped up and she said, no one is coming to save you.
Yep.
Let me say that again. No one is coming to save you.
Right.
It's like, damn.
Uh-oh.
That's so true.
It
Like
really is.
I want someone to go to the gym with me. I want someone to go to the office to prospect with me. I'm calling
Mhm.
this person. I'm calling that person. I've got to do it myself.
Yeah.
And as long as I am relying on other people to get me to do what I need to do, I am going to hold myself back in my own success.
Yeah. It's a limiting belief. It holds you back. Yeah.
And it's, you know, sometimes it's not as fun doing it yourself. And I
Right.
think it's important being honest about that.
Hmm.
Right. But also, will I have twice the success rate if I do it by myself? Will there be less distractions?
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's catch 22.
Yeah.
Another thing Mel Robbins said that's been a big help for me is put your sword down.
Hmm.
Don't realize how often you come to a conversation with your sword like ready to go, ready to defend.
Yeah.
So
I love it. Yeah, she's great. Very, very good. And I think, it all comes back to ego and, having this need for approval and need to everybody to like us, not be disliked. When it gets to prospecting, that's a big part of the holdback of prospecting is we want everybody to say yes. And that's just not realistic, right? So, we got to accept that, no is not a no, it's not personal. It's just it's a no to what you're offering at the moment. And we got to get past that kind of mindset. Um, but what's your goals coming into spring and summer for yourself? What are you committing to kind of raise the game and take yourself to the next level?
yeah, so I had a great year last year.
Yeah.
So I closed just over 16 million.
Wow.
I had a little thermometer, kind of like you see when a school does a fundraiser and the kids bring it in, they fill it up till they reach their goal.
Yeah.
That motivated me throughout the year. I saw that thermometer climb, right? So
Yeah.
my goal for last year was 16 million, and I hit that in September.
Nice.
So then I was like, all right, let's see if we could do 15. And then I did 15. And I said, all right, like, let's just see what we can do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So this year, it's like, you know, I'm happy if I do 10 million. I'm
Hmm.
making enough money, right? We always want more, but I'm trying really hard to not be greedy in the business. There's plenty to go around. So I broke it up into quarters this year. My goal is to do 4 million a quarter,
Hmm.
another 16 million. If I do that, I will be ecstatic. At the end
Great.
of the day, the goal is to always exceed your goal.
Yeah.
But for me, it's very important for me to set goals that are achievable.
Hmm.
So I know I hit 16 million. I know I can do it. I don't want to set it to 18 or 20,
Hmm.
and then I know I'll beat myself up at the end of the year. So it's being honest with myself and saying, hey, what do I need to do to also be proud of myself and be motivated at the same time?
Yeah.
And I see that thermometer. It's standing at 2.1 million right now, and
Hmm.
that's phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
But it's bothering me because I know I'm going to close the first quarter under 4 million.
Hmm.
But then at the same time, I'm like, not if you got hungry enough and you went out there and hustled.
Yeah. So
Still
many
got till
closing those
April
deals.
31st or April 30th or whatever, you know?
Yeah. What's interesting when you reset goals at the beginning of the year, when I'm coaching agents is there's a tendency to push back from success when you've had a really great year and say to yourself, well, I don't think I can hit that again. You have a little bit of imposter syndrome that settles in. You're like, maybe I just got lucky, or maybe I just had all the stars aligned and I was able to do that, but maybe I'll never be able to do that again. And so we immediately start pushing back from our success that we had. Instead of saying to ourselves, no, I earned that business. Actually, I created that business. This is something I did, and kind of accepting and being in gratitude about, you know what, I am capable of doing this and maybe more. So I think that's interesting. And also letting go of the failure. On the reverse, if you didn't have a good year, saying that year doesn't define me. Now it's a fresh page. It's a fresh start. So I think that's
Absolutely. And I think, it comes back to yourself and really being honest and analyzing, those downward spirals, they happen more than once a year, right?
hmm.
Sometimes you burn out in the summer and spring months and like you need a break, but
Yeah.
it is so important to get right back into it,
Yeah.
right? Or to take a day off a week or, block it out,
Hmm.
block off some time for yourself. And that is a standing appointment, right?
100%.
Day a week, give yourself some time to sleep in,
Yeah.
right?
My coaching has always been you got to take one 3-day weekend a month and four vacations a year for a week. And then people are like, man, that's incredible. But if we're self-employed, what are we doing? You can make all the money in the world. If you're not enjoying the money you're making, who
Yeah,
cares? Right. So,
so
and
true.
it's about rest and recharge. So you can take the field again. So I think that's important.
When you come back hungry and ready to go,
Absolutely.
you
Mind
know?
reset. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Nick, if somebody wants to send you a referral from around the country and they say, you know what, I want to work with this kid, I want to send my clients to this guy. He seems like a hungry guy and he's going to do a great job. First of all, tell them what market you serve and how they can get a hold of you.
So I work with the commercial and residential market in Connecticut. I serve the entire state of Connecticut.
Nice.
Lucky for me, we can drive corner to corner in less than 2 hours.
Nice.
Um, so it's easy for me to be knowledgeable in the entire state. My cell phone number is 203-710-6157, but they could reach me at CarButtyRealEstate.com, which I'm sure you'll have linked in the bio.
Awesome. Great, man. Thank you so much for being on the program today. Wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure you inspired a lot of agents. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jim. I really appreciate it.